Our regularly scheduled program will not be seen due to the following special presentation.
There are few creatures that frighten us more than sharks do. But are they really bloodthirsty monsters? We'll have a look at the history of sharks in southern New England and some scientific revelations that could change your opinion of these animals. Plus, we'll take you beneath the waves and explore some of the most famous local shipwrecks. All that and more on this edition of NBC 10 Timelines. Hello, I'm Doug White. Welcome to NBC 10 Timelines. If you hear the theme music from Jaws every time you hear somebody mention the word sharks, you're not alone. But as you're about to see, these extraordinary animals may be more victims than villains.
For thousands of years, sharks have been portrayed as murderous villains. While there is no doubt that sharks can attack swimmers, myths and tall tales have transformed these creatures into monsters. Hollywood knows that sharks mean big business at the box office. Following the success of the movie Jaws, local newspapers tried to reassure the public. But concern about sharks and stories of unconfirmed attacks have been making the front page since the turn of the century. Experts agree that statistically, the greatest danger swimmers face each summer is the drive to their favorite beach. Between 1959 and 1994, Rhode Islanders who enjoy the great outdoors had more to fear from thunderstorms than Jaws. In that time period, 49 residents were struck by lightning, 4 of them fatally. But there wasn't a single death attributed to a shark. A series of shark sightings in the early 1960s did cause alarm. Back then, killing one of these animals, whether it posed a danger or not, was considered a service to the community. In response to reports of sharks seen offshore, authorities began a program of shark patrols at beaches throughout the state. The plan was to clear bathers from any area at the first sign of a fin or other evidence of sharks. Vacationers seemed unconcerned by those precautions. Attendance at state beaches was normal, and the biggest worries remained sunburn and sand in the French fries. But shark sightings at Buttonwoods Park in Warwick caused a near panic. Despite patrol, some angry residents took matters into their own hands. Police reprimanded one boater who fired at a shark with a rifle, reportedly hitting it 3 times. This extraordinary news footage shows a man harpooning a small shark that had strayed into local waters. The animal, which seemed to offer little resistance, may have been sick or injured. To most people at that time, killing this creature would have been considered heroic. Hunting sharks for sport was popular in the 1980s. While few were considered good to eat, the challenge of finding and catching these powerful opponents lured many a fisherman to test his skill. Hooking sharks, killing them, and later tossing the carcasses overboard was perfectly acceptable. Judging those who did so back then by today's standards would be unfair. The public's opinion of sharks has only recently begun to change. The National Marine Fisheries Shark Tagging Program currently includes over 6,000 volunteers. Many of those who participate are sport fishermen. These anglers still experience the thrill of catching a shark, but instead of landing the animal and allowing it to die, they tag and release their fish. The attached capsule contains information that will help scientists to better understand the migration and behavior of sharks. Between 1962 and 2001, more than 170,000 sharks have been tagged. The longest recorded distance traveled by a tagged shark is 3,000 nautical miles.
May I have your attention, please? Due to sharks being spotted outside the buoys, swimming was restricted today. Since lifeguards are off duty at 6 p.m., swimming is at your own risk. We strongly recommend you do not go in the water.
Recently, sharks have once again been spotted here in the Ocean State. Bathers seem to take the news in stride, though, as always, the tale grew larger in the telling.
The lifeguards took the kayak out there, and they were above about 4 or 5 of them, and they said that one of them was about 7 foot long. It was a blue shark.
What we heard was there was definitely a baby blue shark, and then I heard there were 2. One was 9 feet long and one was 17.
Officials did their best to protect the public without causing undue alarm. Swimming was restricted while experts attempted to identify the type of sharks and determine whether they posed a threat. No one can say for certain, but scientists do have a likely suspect: the spiny dogfish.
Nobody really knows what sharks they saw, although some people speculate that it was the spiny dogfish. So if so, then spiny dogfish are completely harmless. I mean, I suppose if you step on one or grab one, you could get hurt just like, with any animal. But they're looking for fish, they're looking for shrimp, things like that. They don't care about people. If they see you, they're going to swim away.
Cheryl Wilka, an assistant professor in the Biological Sciences Department at URI, has been studying sharks from their earliest moments, like this embryonic shark patiently breathing inside its egg case.
We don't know a lot about sharks. We don't know a lot about the ocean. I mean, it's a realm where it's very hard to study. The sharks have been around since about the Devonian, so that's about 460 million years ago. They've been around a long time, and they've made it this far, so they're doing pretty well.
Dr. Wilka believes that our irrational hatred and fear of sharks can best be overcome through research and education.
There's some animals that, like the white shark, which everybody knows, they open their jaws and they gouge out chunks out of large prey. There's other sharks that come up and just suck their prey in. Bamboo sharks can open and close their mouth and suck in their food in 60 milliseconds or less. They're that fast.
These elegant and enigmatic creatures are now the focus of intense research at the University of Rhode Island laboratories.
These guys are specialists at suction feeding. So they suck in their prey like a vacuum cleaner, and then they'll take it in and then they'll crunch it down. They're really good at eating crabs and things like that. You can see how the small mouth, just like a vacuum cleaner, the crevice tool in your vacuum cleaner, the smaller the hole, the more suction it can create.
Experts are convinced that sharks play a vital role in the balance of nature, a balance that could be upset if we allow our tolerance for these animals to be overshadowed by misunderstanding and fear.
Every animal has a place in the world. There's a cycle in the world. Every organism has a position that it fills, and there's usually some sort of an upset in the balance of nature if something becomes extinct. Well, sharks, they search out weak, injured, sick fish. So they basically clean up, the population of sick fishes. So they definitely have a place in the world, and the oceans would be a lot worse off if we didn't have them.
In case you were wondering, the shark cage footage in that segment was shot locally. But don't worry, the divers were about 50 miles off the coast of Rhode Island. Coming up next, we'll go beneath the waves again, this time to visit some fascinating shipwrecks here in southern New England. NBC 10 Timelines will continue in just a moment. There's something fascinating about shipwrecks, and new technology is making it possible now to explore more of these sunken vessels than ever before. Welcome back to NBC 10 Timelines. I'm Doug White. For centuries, the waters off southern New England have guarded the secrets of shipwrecks. But the search for these sunken vessels is revealing new and intriguing information.
From the time men first sailed the seas, stories of shipwrecks have fascinated and frightened us. For over 2,000 years, divers have risked their lives to recover lost cargo. In modern times, archaeologists have turned their attention to sunken ships. The University of Rhode Island coordinated this underwater excavation project in the 1970s. The goal was to recover artifacts from Revolutionary warships discovered in Newport Harbor. Hundreds of historical objects were retrieved and preserved, including 18th century navigational instruments, fragments of pottery, and cannon weighing over a ton each. Vessels that played a role in wartime seemed to have a special allure for those who were drawn to shipwrecks. America's entry into World War I meant that thousands of soldiers, like these troops leaving Newport, had to be carried across the Atlantic to the trenches of France. That was a problem for the War Department because the construction of transport ships ate up huge amounts of steel, a precious metal during a war. A daring proposal was put forward. Why not build ships made of concrete? Experimental vessels, their hulls composed of sand and gravel, were quickly constructed. Launched in the summer of 1919, weighing over 1,600 tons, the Cape Fear was too late for the war. Instead, she was put to work plying the waters along the East Coast. Heading from Providence to Virginia on a cold, clear night, the ship ignored a warning signal and cut in front of another vessel. A collision was unavoidable. Within minutes, the Cape Fear plummeted beneath the waves, taking 19 men to their death. Lying beneath 200 feet of water, due west of Hammersmith Farm, the ship can only be explored by the most determined wreck divers. Darkness and swirling currents are the constant companions of this ill-fated experiment that sank like a stone. Weight may have played a role in another nautical tragedy. In December of 1943, the coal-carrying ship Suffolk was headed for Boston fully loaded when she suddenly found herself in the jaws of an icy gale.
The ship called, it was foundering, it needed assistance immediately, but the closest ship to it was 64 miles away, so no one could get to the Suffolk right away, and it vanished. They had a search with 9 ships, aircraft, blimps. They looked for 52 hours, and nothing.
Bill Campbell is one of the most experienced wreck divers in New England. He has explored an impressive list of sunken vessels using Little Bubba, his remote-controlled underwater vehicle. The twisted wreckage of the Suffolk lies at the bottom of Rhode Island Sound. The ship suffered a second indignity when a Navy vessel mistook her for an enemy submarine and launched a depth charge attack. The combination of bombardment, following a losing battle to a vicious storm, has left a jumble of metal plates and broken cables. But some clues to her fate may be found amidst the debris.
What's interesting is you can see the prop is still intact, the stern of the ship, but the rudder snapped off. The rudder's missing. That possibly could be the reason for it not being able to stay afloat and foundering in the storm.
News of the ship's plight made the front page of the Providence Journal in 1943. The Navy launched a massive search and rescue mission, but no trace of the Suffolk could be found.
And the amazing thing was, 18 days after the search was canceled, this Navy destroyer escort finds a life raft, 2 men in it. They bring the life raft aboard. The men obviously are dead, but the medical officer said they only died in the past 2 days. They survived in the North Atlantic in the winter for about 18 days.
Because she left no survivors to tell her tale, the loss of the Suffolk will always remain a puzzle. Half a century later, the wreck still casts a spell over those who would try to solve the mystery.
This little piece of history all of a sudden comes alive, because that ship has stayed on the bottom and nothing has changed since December 11, 1943. So it's like swimming through a museum. It's a time capsule.
Off the coast of Block Island lies another ship, this one with a darker history, the German submarine U-853. Commissioned on June 25, 1943, it was one of many subs called Sea Wolves prowling the coastline of the United States. By 1945, U-boats had sunk a dozen merchant ships off the coast of New England, killing over 200 people. Duty on a German U-boat nearly guaranteed a burial at sea. More than 39,000 men served on these ships during the war, but only 7,000 ever returned home. U-853 had survived so many close calls that her crew proudly nicknamed her Der Seiltänzer, the tightrope walker. On May 5, 1945, 3 miles southeast of Point Judith, a coal ship named the Black Point was peacefully steaming for Boston. Suddenly, a torpedo from the German sub ripped into her hull. The ship was cut in two by an explosion loud enough to be heard ashore. The vessel plunged to the bottom of the sea, taking 12 crew members to their death. U-853 attempted to escape, but this time, the tightrope walker would not be so lucky. News of the attack was reported almost immediately, and Navy warships raced to the scene. Using sonar, they located their target and hurled an avalanche of depth charges on the surrounded submarine. Unable to escape, U-853 was hammered into submission by a relentless series of explosions. The once mighty Seawolf was transformed into an iron coffin for over 40 men imprisoned inside the submarine. Hitler had committed suicide, and the order for submarines to cease fire had been given the day before U-853 attacked the Black Point. Naval experts at the time considered U-boat captains to be among the most fanatical members of the German military, and predicted that some would continue to fight despite the new orders. For years after her sinking, rumors surfaced that U-853 had a cargo of treasure on board. One story claimed that $500,000 in jewels and currency were hidden in shell cases aboard the vessel. These stories have generated many salvage attempts over the years, all without visible signs of success. If this submarine was on some sinister cloak and dagger mission, the secret has died with her crew. And time is slowly reducing the wreck of U-853 to barnacles and rust.
We have a reminder to those viewers who might like to visit some of those shipwrecks. They can be dangerous, even for experienced divers. And there are laws that prohibit access to certain sunken vessels. Next on NBC 10 Timelines, a very special look at summer in southern New England. Please join us after these messages. Despite some less than pleasant weather, this summer has had its share of memorable moments. As summertime draws to a close, we thought it might be fun to look back at some of the images that remind us of just how lucky we are to live in this part of the country. We invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. We're proud to say that from the air, the land, and beneath the sea, our videographers did their very best to capture the perfect image of summer in southern New England. NBC 10 Timelines will continue in just a moment. That's our program for today. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, by the way, or comments, you can email us at timelines, care of turnto10.com. And while you're online, why not take the Timelines History Challenge? I'm Doug White, inviting you to join us again next time for another edition of NBC 10 Timeline.